website called Stop Common Core Illinois, and I also have a Facebook page, Stop Common Core in Illinois. I'm by no means the only person working on this. We have a whole team of people who are very passionate about this issue across the state. I'm a mom of a child who's a 4th grader in public school, and the way I became aware of Common Core is because last year I noticed that school drastically changed. The homework was just very different than it had been before. My son started getting very bad grades and started having tummy aches, didn't want to go to school. They kind of stopped teaching penmanship, cursive, and spelling. And when I asked, they said it's not a part of the core curriculum. And I said, core curriculum, what's that? And here I am, after thousands of hours of research, hundreds of hours on national conference calls with other people who are concerned about this, and a lot of time talking to maybe some of you via email, Facebook. And so that's why I'm here. I do have a background in data collection. I worked at a major university in social science research, so I also have kind of concerns about the data collection associated with Common Core. And I'll see if this mouse will work this far away. Nope. Sometimes I get lucky. Hold on, maybe it's turned off. Nope. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Common Core is kind of a system of programs, actually. Many of you have probably heard about the standards, but a lot of separate programs that I'm calling the Common Core system all have been implemented sort of with each other and hand in hand with each other. They have the learning standards, computerized classroom, expanded data collection, new standardized national tests, and new data-driven teacher evaluations. So why did they create Common Core? The stated goal from the creators is that they wanted to have standards where every state's on the same program, so you can compare performance from state to state for most of the nation. They wanted clear standards. They said they wanted them to be robust and relevant and prepare students for 21st century jobs. That's one of their catchphrases. And that they would be college and career ready students. So who pushed for the Common Core? In the beginning, it was governors, and a lot of them were Republicans, and a lot of them were Democrats. And they worked together because a lot of them saw their standards had been written for No Child Left Behind. They needed to update them. They got together and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we shared standards? So that's how the idea started. And then it kind of got ugly. So then they received grant money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Carnegie Foundation and several other grants. They formed a company called Achieve Inc. And so two Washington, D.C. trade organizations, which really means lobbyists, being the NGA, the National Governors Association, and the CCSSO, the Council of Chief State School Officers. They worked on the Common Core, they developed it, and they now own and trademark it. So it's a product. This is not something owned by the schools. It's a product owned by lobbying firms. So that's very important to understand, because that means we can't change it. We can't vote people out if we don't like it, because it's owned by a company like this, okay? And Illinois was very involved in Common Core. Our officials here have always been very pro-Common Core. So how does the federal feds get involved in education? Because education is a state's responsibility, right? Well, there's this act called the ESEA, and it was created in the 60s as part of the War on Poverty and Civil Rights. And the idea is that students would get equal opportunity to education. So what's happened is, like many things in the government, It started out as one thing, but over the years it's grown and become more powerful and tentacles going out. Until we got to No Child Left Behind. Probably every educator in this crowd will tell you, no child left behind, no good, right? And so, No Child Left Behind technically expired in 2008, so we needed to update. So now we have Common Core. And the authority that the U.S. Department of Ed claims, which some lawyers say is actually unconstitutional and they don't have this claim, the authority they have to get involved is that they are implementing Common Core through the vehicle of No Child Left Behind. And they're using all kinds of incentives, and you'll hear about waivers and all this stuff to manipulate the states into basically doing what they want. So that's how the feds are involved in our education. So now we have the Trojan horse. So the governors had this idea, right? And they were developing these standards. And at that point, I guess maybe you could call it state-led, right? It was their idea, they were doing it, their corporation, their trademark. But what happened is they made what most people would consider a bad decision by linking it to the stimulus bill. So what they did is, to get this stimulus money, they put in the agreements to receive the money that you needed to adopt college and career-ready education standards. You had to expand your data collection from cradle to career. That was the state fiscal stabilization fund, and then we had the race to the top funds, another set of strings where the states had to work with the U.S. Department of Education to meet these requirements in order to get that money. So, and remember, at that time, we had just collapsed economically, and states were, quite frankly, especially Illinois, freaking out. Because the school systems, a lot of them are already underwater, and then the economy went bad. Well, now, they applied for all these grants, jumped through all different hoops, but basically what it is that they were bribed to take Common Core. In fact, some of the states, like Illinois, their meeting was that they adopted Common Core before they really adopted it as an emergency measure to get the money. Kentucky and a whole bunch of states adopted Common Core, and it wasn't even written yet. They didn't even see it. They just said, give me the money. Okay, so that's the Trojan horse of why states went for Common Core. Plus, some of them wanted it. You know, they had been working on it. They really liked it. The money was a bonus for them. So, when they applied for the funds, it was in most places like here in the spring and summer, the legislature wasn't even in session. So we just had to sign these memorandums of agreement. We'll give you the stimulus funds and you do this. So our state legislators, when I first started on this trip, most of them didn't even know about Common Core. They just knew we got stimulus funds for education. They didn't know all these strings were there. So it's very important that you contact your state legislators and let them know. Some of them are like, common what? So this was really brought in administratively through the Illinois Department of Education and the governor. So nobody voted on this. There's no Common Core bill that we can just repeal. It's now a big tentacle-y mess of different programs, different grants, different money, different agreements, different waivers, okay? So that's important to understand too. One of the sneaky tricks here is that, notice that these letters of agreement for the stimulus funds said that the states had to adopt college and career ready standards. They never mentioned Common Core. They probably didn't want to go out that far on a legal branch to actually mention a product that the states had to basically buy or use. So they just say college and career ready, but at that time everyone knew what they meant by college and career ready is Common Core. It's the only standards that meet the criteria of what they consider college and career ready. So that's one of those goofy government little sneaky tricks. 4 states actually stood up and said, thanks or no thanks, we'll do our own college and career ready. So as much as this is how they brought it in, I don't call taking the money and you have to be college and career ready, either state-led or voluntary. And it was paid for by Bill Gates too. So that's how we got it. The one good thing is it's a weakness because you can say, okay, you gave us money to be college and career ready, fine, we'll do our own college and career ready. And there's like 10 or 12 states that are starting down that path and dumping Common Core. So it was a weakness too. So just so you can see, that's what the standards look like. It's just a list of kind of numbered, coded standards, and then a big explanation of learning benchmarks that a child has to reach in each grade. You can go to the Illinois Department of Ed website and read all of them if you want. It's very long. There are some skills and emotional behavioral benchmarks that children should hit in each grade. I don't think, at least me, I think standards are a very good thing. And in fact, some of the Common Core standards I think are actually very good. Not everything's all bad, not everything's the boogeyman. There's good and bad with everything, including Common Core. It's, up to you to decide what you think is valuable and what isn't. Right now, Common Core is limited to math and English language arts. Common Core, and this is very important to understand because it's a misunderstanding. Common Core does not dictate curriculum directly. In other words, Illinois or your school district is not being told specifically which books they have to buy. So all that stuff you see on Facebook about the books, well, a lot of the books I think are pretty kooky too, but the darn school district picked those books, okay? So let's not bark up the wrong tree and look what they call we're all misinformed. So Common Core is what you learn, not the books you use. And so the thing is that the tests lead what goes on in your classroom, so of course everyone's buying the Common Core aligned books, because the Common Core aligned books, right in the lesson plan for the teacher, it says which Common Core standard you're meeting with this lesson plan, so they can keep track that yes, we're hitting those benchmarks. So everyone's switching to those Common Core aligned books, and a lot of them are, quite frankly, the publishers are really, really bad books, okay? And really kind of goofy. I think a lot of them printed really quickly. In New York, there's Common Core books where pages are actually upside down and switched. That's how quickly they printed these Common Core books, because that stimulus money put this thing on a freight train going 100 miles an hour. In Illinois, we often call our standards just the new learning standards. So the English standards, so they define the reading materials as real-world text. Students read excerpts a lot of times from literature with modern critiques instead of reading the whole book. So instead of reading, you name that book, Catcher in the Rye, what have you, they read an excerpt with critiques. Instead, they are told by the architect of the English language arts that you should stay within the 4 corners of the page, meaning if you read the Gettysburg Address, you don't talk about that you're on a battlefield with lime covering hundreds of dead bodies reading this address. You don't talk about the Civil War, who anyone is. You really just read it and they call it deep reading, looking at the words and what the words mean, and then reading critiques of what you're supposed to think it means. Now, of course, all teachers may be teaching it slightly different, but this is from a video of the architect who talks about this example exactly that I just gave you. Stay within the 4 corners of the book. Students are being taught to kind of write robotically. I'm told that eventually algorithms are going to grade their essay answers. So they have to design the essay in a very formulaic way for that to happen. Spelling, as I said, spelling and penmanship are not emphasized. That's really They think kind of the past because kids are on computers now with spell check. There are many controversial and politicized items on what's called Appendix B reading list. Teachers don't have to use this, but really, how does a pornography end up in the Common Core actual document? Okay, so this book's a very tragic book. It's a good book, but it's really not appropriate probably for 11th grade for all families. So the math standards, how many people are helping with math, have a student they're helping with math? You probably really noticed that the homework looks different, huh? So, I did. So overall, the way the math is set up is they know that kids go into college and a lot of times they have to take remedial math, right? Because they really didn't keep up with math. They didn't take that advanced math in high school. So rather than work on that, they're just making the expectations of what you know mathematically when you get out of high school, when you graduate, lower. So when they say college ready, they mean like community college ready, not four-year university. So they delay everything by a year, so most kids will not have the opportunity to take calculus. It's like being a year behind, sort of. A lot of people are going to integrated or blended math, where you don't do, algebra freshman year, geometry sophomore year. It's all every year you get all clumps of all of it. Okay, so a lot of people are that's different. And then there's some word problems, the real world math. Those really make me nuts. So lots and lots of word problems, that's a change. And then there's the fuzzy math concept, in that there's a lot of emphasis on process. The student's supposed to show how they got to their answer, probably appropriate in the upper grades, but there's a lot of child psychologists that'll tell you they're requiring this how did you get your answer in like kindergarten, first and second grade, that a child is not, their brain is actually not developmentally able to process that request. Children at that age, you say, that's a cat, and then you ask them, is that a cat? And they say, yeah, that's a cat. They don't think, why is that a cat? So children in younger ages cannot do a lot of the math, like just physically their brain cannot handle it. And so I have a lot of teachers call me that have kindergartners who are on the floor crying. I mean, I've had teachers call me in tears from the teacher's lounge, kindergarten teachers. It's really tragic. So this is, most of you who raise your hand have seen math like this. This is just one math problem, but they're making them demonstrate how you get the answer in many, many different ways. Some kids love this, and other kids are really struggling. My kid has a D now. He went from A to D. He doesn't get this. So we have more standards headed our way. Common Core is not just going to stay with the English and math. Now, the creators of Common Core will say this is not part of Common Core, but it's the same developers, the same companies, the same funders, and developed to fit in with English and math, so I call it Common Core. So to me, that's a game. So we have next generation science standards. Illinois just adopted them this last month. They worked on them, they're in pilot state, and excuse me, it's also managed and was developed by all the exact same people, basically. And they're controversial. It's one of those environmental type, curriculums for children from kindergarten on are taught of the negative impact that they have on the environment, which is fine, because of course that is true. All animals have a negative impact on the environment, but it seems very unbalanced. And there's a lot of chitter chatter in the science world about these standards. A lot of states who said they were going to adopt them and backed out. So there's a lot of lab work too, less learning, the background. So here's the states that said they were going to adopt it, but like I said, they're already having problems in a lot of states where I don't think they're going to do it. So There's social sciences coming, and the final draft was released in late 2013, and history. Excuse me, there's also there's a national set of sex ed. They were adopted by Chicago. Of course, in Illinois, you don't have to, you can opt out of sex ed. However, they say this is not related to Common Core, but it is national standards, and right on the cover is a huge word, core. So I'm not really sure how to interpret that. And it's pretty controversial stuff, you know, whether you want to consider it part of Common Core or not, that's up to you. But they are really pushing. There's like 2 or 3 groups, district by district, state by state, they're pushing this in the schools. So next we'll talk about data collection. So we have the Illinois longitudinal data system. So Common Core is data driven, right? So they're collecting data. And what's happened is with the stimulus bill, they had the money to put this thing on steroids. I mean, we're talking the national models up to 400 data points on kids. And that's just demographics, basically. We used to track kids from kindergarten to 12, right? Well, now it's preschool through age 20. In fact, in Illinois, they can collect data on your child at age 24 hours old, okay? 24 hours, that's barely out of the womb, right? So we could literally say womb to career. By career, I mean 20, they're tracking you into the labor force. They're going to collect information about what you did after school. So they say, oh, there's no data sharing. There's a lot of data sharing. Now, I'm not saying that any state is out there giving out your kid's social security number. That's ridiculous. These are ethical, good people. They're following the rules. But the thing that I have a problem with is, did you know this? Did you know this? So they're gonna, when they get this all set up with the dashboards and these portals that you can log in, parents, teachers, colleges, potential employment and career centers. The testing companies is the most troubling because you have data going back and forth on these computerized tests that we're going to talk about, but the federal government can go in their database and see your stuff, and they say, oh, the federal government doesn't share the student file. Well, that's because there's someone in between. Again, it's a word game. So we got education apps that are be talking with your data. Okay, now this is not happening yet, and they're working on it. It's going to take a lot of money and time to get all this done. You have the school district administrators talking to the Illinois Department of Ed, who's talking to the federal government. Social service agencies, your kid had WIC, they were below birth weight, you're on welfare, whatever, that goes in there. So this, well, you know, my big problem with this is I worked in data. I was a data analyst. I don't have a problem with data. I have a problem with not allowing people to opt out and not disclosing, okay? So there you have it. There is a national database model, and it states what they legally can and what they would like every state to collect. They want every state to have identical, nearly identical databases. So some of the things people have flagged in these 400 data points, and you can go on the website and look, it's right there. This is the national data model. Religious practices, affiliation, mental and physical problems of the student or their families. You know, religious too, of the family. Sexual behavior, attitudes, illegal, antisocial, and incriminating behavior, all that will be in the file. Okay? And again, this is not me. It's right on the website, and here's where they get the authority. So here's my thing. And anyone in here that's a computer person knows this. If you have, every state has a P20 data system and they're nearly the same and talking to each other, that equals a national database, right? Computer guys, gals, you're just shaking your heads, right? So when they come out and say we're not building a national database, I say, oh really? So Illinois, and this is right off the Illinois They're talking about privacy. Again, I don't think people in Illinois work at the Department of Ed or how to do credit card stamps or something with the student data. They take it very seriously. I've talked to the lawyers over there. But these are the people that they are considering when looking at the privacy that they're going to put in the news media. Education partners, what does that mean? State legislators, parents and other members, regional offices of education, what does that mean? Local education authorities, the State Board of Ed, so on and so on. Again, Jan, if someone would call me and let me be a part of that. So this is off the Department of Education's, Illinois Department of Education, this is their PowerPoint. So you see it's the P20, early learning, preschool, all that, social services and that as a little child. Then you have your K through 12 apps and vendors feeding in and out of the shared learning environment is what they call it. Post-secondary, college, and job, all feeding together into this database. Okay, so how many people were told that at their Common Core meeting at school? Nobody. Okay. So another thing you should know is the privacy laws, federal privacy laws that were in place when you were a kid, FERPA, those have been changed. It's been loosened. So that now, basically, anybody with a educational interest can have access to the data. Again, I'm not saying they're going to give your child's name or their social security number or anything, but they have access to data that they can prove they have a right to look at for research or educational reasons. This was done administratively, was not voted on by Congress. It's just quietly, was entered as a new regulation. And the congressman, U.S. congressman, has sent a letter to Ernie Duncan saying that's out of line. Okay, so tests, we talked a little bit about them. They're computerized. They're going to be like 2 tests instead of 1 high-stake test. The test that Illinois went with is the PARC test, which stands for Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. Again, this is a product, folks. It's owned by somebody, okay? We're supposed to start it next year. It was supposed to be this year, but I guess they weren't ready. Somewhere, I think I've seen different numbers, but somewhere around 2,000 Illinois schools are going to field test the PARC. Again, I have an issue with this because, first of all, when you own a product, generally you pay for or arrange your own research. You don't do it in public schools. Maybe that's just me, but when they make new lipstick or whatever, I'm not forced to use it to see if it's any good. The other thing people don't know is that the college exam, entrance exams, and the GED are also being written to be Common Core. Okay, so if you go to a school that's not Common Core aligned, good luck on the test. The computerized assessments are supposed to be, and you can go, say just like 3 weeks ago release that you can do practice questions. They're supposed to be like kind of beyond the old multiple choice type questions. They supposedly have the technology where you can have oral questions where they use voice recognition software to record your child. Videos, the camera can turn on and off. Or you watch something and then you answer questions and, they can go, wow. Some of it to me sounds pretty cool, really, because multiple choice is kind of dull and, you miss a lot when that's the way you rate a child. Some of it I think sounds cool, but again, how many of you heard about this? Unless you're reading like EdTech, you don't hear about it. So another thing that's been brought up from a researcher in Ohio, that the tests are programmed to loop back to retest and retest and retest a child on a certain standard, one of those listed standards. And so there's some concern about states playing with that, where you could really retest someone until you get the result you want. So they did a field test in New York last last year, it was a disaster. There were technical glitches. Children were tested on standards that had not been covered in school yet. Some of them got questions right out of their textbook, but if you went to a school that didn't use that textbook, then you didn't see those questions. Parents in New York are fabulously angry. The teachers union's angry. New York is just blowing up, okay, big time. It's unbelievable what's happening there. It's almost virtual riots, like whole stadiums full of parents just screaming. So we'll see how the Illinois park test goes. They probably learned a lot of the lessons from New York, so I don't think that's going to happen here. But it's something, you know, the park field test doesn't count, but we'll see what happens. And I already mentioned that, you know, one of the things, you know, here is the phrase out of the testing consortium, which does state that the testing companies, because it's on a computer, they're going to see your kid's tests. They have data on your kid. And the U.S. Department of Ed has access to that data. So what does that mean? Nobody knows. But why is that even in the contract? So this is kind of the kooky thing, and this is in the high-tech classroom department. There are schools who are putting monitors on kids, pulse monitoring, mouses, crazy chairs that measure their vitals, sensor chairs, cameras, IDs that track the kids, the retina scans for lunch programs and getting on and off the bus and stuff. Again, I love high tech. Some of this is probably awesome, but it's not awesome when you retina scan all the kids in the school in Florida and don't tell the parents. Right. Okay, that's totally not awesome. And all of that goes in your file. Now, if you're watching the news with the NSA and the IRS, you know, all those files are private. It is, I think, a legitimate concern. The other thing I want to say about the is all complaints, right? We're all mad. Google's sharing our stuff, Facebook. All these guys, you know, doing stuff, we're kind of mad at them. That's voluntary. You signed a contract. This is not voluntary. Okay? This is not voluntary. And so that and this are not the same. Okay? That's another thing to think about. So, who developed the Common Core? It's our education reformers. They've been at this for a while. So, we have Bill Gates, philanthropist, Microsoft founder. He paid for the development of Common Core. It's unbelievable. Every time you turn a rock over, who's there? Bill Gates. Okay? This guy's used grant money to pay off the teachers union, the PTA, the Chamber of Commerce, Stand for Children. You name any group that's out there saying that they like Common Core, go turn the rock over and see who you find. This guy right here. And my point is, Bill Gates, you may be the best person in the world. You may be a wonderful person with a huge heart, but I never asked you to come in my school and reform my kid's education. Hands off my kid. That's my point. It is of note that he works with the UN on Agenda 21 and UNESCO, which is global initiatives for education for all, and Common Core is showing up in other countries, like Ireland. So, depending on your perspective on the whole global thing, you know, if you have a tinfoil hat or not, you should know that. So we got already Duncan, Chicago Zone, and so these are just some quotes about where he sees schools, okay? He says that we have to pursue a cradle-to-career agenda from early childhood programs through post-secondary graduation. He wants community schools to replace our family-centered society with a school-centered society. You don't believe me? Go on stopcommoncoreillinois.org and watch the video. Okay? They would include preschools, health clinics, etc., 14-hour days, 7 days a week, being under the government's guiding hand. Again, he made a speech for the United Nations about green schools and sustainable schools. So he says that we want to work with our global partner, UNESCO. Again, you want to see the speech? Go look it up. David Coleman, my personal nightmare. So he's a businessman and an education reformer. He's very, very educated and charming. And he is a former lobbyist for big data. He actually is one of the people that coined that phrase for ed data with McKinney and Company. He is currently the president of the College Board who's writing the college exam. So now he's decided what your kids need to learn, and now he's driving curriculum, right? He who writes the test writes the curriculum. He's involved with Michelle Reed. A lot of people have mixed feelings about her. He's the salesman who asked the governors to adopt it, as he said he tricked the Republicans into taking it. And there's one little bad word here, so his quote, not mine. As you grow up in the world, you realize people really don't give a about what you feel or what you think. That's why he wrote the English standards this way. Don't believe me? Watch the video. He said it. Another person is Linda Darling-Hammond. She's all over this, but on every committee, whatever. And just so you know, she's very into wealth redistribution. Only to her, it's education redistribution and social justice. I know that that's controversial. She's also a former partner with Bill Ayers. So that's why you see the stories about Common Core coming from Bill Ayers. But to be fair, Bill Ayers on video says he's against the Common Core. So you can figure that out. So that's kind of the crazy little section of this. So now let's talk about homeschooling and private schools. Those parents who've decided to take education into their own hands. So we all know Melissa Harry Harris and the school of reformer type people. They think, you know, we have to break through our private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families. So private schools, Catholic schools and Lutheran schools in Illinois, most of them are adapting to the Common Core. The Lutheran schools are sneaky. They call it 21st century learning. Catholic schools have a panel of people who are adopting into Catholic doctrine, Catholic teaching. You need to check with your private school and see if they're teaching the Common Core. But they probably won't tell you. They'll say college and career ready. They'll say 21st century learning. They'll say we're partially adopting the Common Core. Why are they doing it? Because they're considered stakeholders in state education, so they are invited to the meetings and pressured. They have ties to state and federal programs and funding, and they are under the impression that if they don't follow the Common Core, they'll lose some of that. And also they're under pressure because a lot of them are institutions where they have high graduation rates. Kids did really well on college entrance exams, and they're worried that if they don't adopt to David Coleman's standards, then their children will not score as well on David Coleman's tests. So that's why they're doing it. In most states for homeschooling, you're not required to be Common Core. However, because the books and the college, a lot of kids who are homeschooled take a GED, you know, high school equivalency, and SAT and ACT, all that's to be Common Core. So my homeschooling friends are such heroes. They're such a help to me. They are really on the front line, and their kids aren't even in the public schools. So just quickly, I'm going to go through kind of a recap of why I think you should be concerned, and a lot of other people. First of all, what's the mission of public education anyway? Should our goal be to create college and career-ready adults? Only 12% of jobs require a college degree, and and the average student loan debt is $30,000. And there's about 3 million good jobs right now that can't be filled, like welders, etc. Because so many kids are going to college who are living in their parents' basement, and then you have these really good high-paying jobs and there's no one to take them. So we have a misalignment. Do we need more? I don't know. And the arrogance of these central planners who think they know what a 21st century job is. For example, if you went to college in 1975, did you imagine that by like 1990 you'd be at a computer working on Excel? No, you'd have no idea. You'd be lucky if you took typing in high school if you graduated in the 70s, okay? So why on earth do people like David Coleman think they know what a 21st century job is? Tomorrow, the new big thing could be invented that we don't even know about. So Common Core really limits classical education like literature, poetry, drama, art, music, foreign languages. It's eating into funds for those kind of programs in a lot of school districts, and it's eating into time. Like my son has 2 periods of math now. So they had to get rid of science and social studies. They're alternating them on quarters. So, traditionally when you read Western, read about Western civilization, American literature, so on and so forth, that leads you to your self-awareness. Think about when you read Tom Sawyer. It made you feel something about life. It made you learn something about life, about that time, the Mississippi River. Was he a good boy? Was he a bad boy? When you're reading excerpts of a book with modern interpretations, you miss that. So are we going to be fostering civic, self-aware citizens if they're college and career ready? I don't know. What do you think? Accountability. Common Core is a product from a company. It can't be changed. No one knows how to change it. Schools can be audited. They're supposed to have 15%, only 15% veer off Common Core. Like, for example, if they want to teach cursive, which is not in the standards. Public education is a state responsibility, and states should not hand it over to a private organization to the federal government. If you don't like Common Core, who do you vote out? Questions. Costs. There was no financial there was really no cost analysis done. It's an unfunded mandate. Illinois schools are buying new books, computers, gadgets, like my school got done, electronic whiteboards. They have to retrain the teachers. If there's any teachers here, I know you guys have been going to, retraining. They think that it'll cost about $733 million over the next 7 years in Illinois. They received $42.8 and raised to the top. They did get other stimulus funds. But that money's running out, and then what do you do? And the school districts are stuck with the bill. In fact, they changed the Illinois school code, and you can look it up, that other unfunded mandates, you can go to the Illinois Department of Ed and say, we can't do this, and you mediate. Common Core, no mediation. You're stuck with it, baby. It's right in the law. Big Ed is cashing in on this. Where should our dollars go? Should they go to teachers? Don't we have pension problems? Don't we have problems with our buildings, etc.? Or should it be going to education material publishers who are publishing the exact same book, only they put a sticker on the front that says Common Core aligned? How about all these high-tech guys? All this stuff's great, but what about school districts that can't afford it? And these tablets that are donated through grants, the cameras turn on, they spy on students, there's been lawsuits. The kids break through the security right away, and they're on instant messaging and doing all sorts of stuff in class. We need to kind of think a little bit before we get the fancy stuff. The testing companies are more expensive for the tests. These research firms and think tanks and all these people are growing rich off your dollars. I can't even tell you how many firms and non-for-profits have popped up around Common Core. In fact, there's a little training center right down the street from me in Oak Brook. Okay, it's a private company making money out of Common Core. So we talked about the data and the ethics. You know, we didn't talk about, well, they want to store this stuff in the cloud. Everyone knows every day some major corporation gets hacked in the cloud. What do we do about that? What about all these things that they could collect? Which, by the way, Illinois is not collecting that or anyone yet, but they're going to move that way. What's a red flag? How does your child's medical and mental health data affect what they do in school? What if you make a stupid move one day? It's in there to your career. Who determines how that data is used? And will parents know? What can you opt in and opt out? No one's telling us. This is just, to me, super slippery scope. You know, nobody's talking about it. That's a big problem. So we already talked about who writes the test, control the curriculum. You know, they say, oh, we're not writing a curriculum. Well, the guy who's writing the standards and the tests is the same team of people, and you have to buy materials that teach to that test. Are you controlling the curriculum? Which the federal government, by law, is not allowed to do. Another thing about the curriculum is that publishers will phase out old books that are Common Core compliant because the states won't be buying them anymore. Too bad, homeschoolers. You have all this new online textbooks that change and adapt as your child learns. How, as a parent, can you look and see what they saw? You can't. Common Core is crept into everything. Even Sesame Street is Common Core compliant, okay? And even if schools reject Common Core, it's going to be very expensive to keep those other non-Common Core books in print. Teachers, like I said, teachers call me all the time. A lot of teachers have been around for a while tell me, I just can't go through another reform movement, and they're out of there. A lot of teachers, like in New York, who are using the New York curriculum that goes with Common Core, when you look at the lessons plans, it says everything except step right foot, step left foot. I mean, it tells them, turn this way, say this, turn that way, say that. I wouldn't want to be a teacher if I was just reading off a script. Why don't they just put a robot in the room? A lot of teachers aren't adjusting to the math or what have you. Like I say, I think most people think some's good and some's bad. And there's conflicting evidence regarding the different formulas they're going to use on the teachers' evaluations. A lot of teachers are really upset about that. And what's really, really sad is the teachers union took that Gates money and they have nowhere to go. I have union officials in this state talking to me. They are frustrated because the National Union took, I think, $2 million from the Gates Foundation to promote Common Core and retrain the teachers. And we talked about it, you know, are we on the global agenda? And nobody told us. If you read Agenda 21, which I did, I think some of Agenda 21's a little out there, but there are striking similarities in between the global education movement and Common Core. And will it work? This has not been field tested anywhere. The standards are not from anywhere, they're new. No one tested them, like, for example, in one state or one city to see if it's a good idea. No, we went nationwide from the very beginning. And so no child left behind, not so hot. There's no solid evidence that Common Core will be even better. In fact, some of the methodology behind Common Core has failed in the past, like the so-called fuzzy math didn't work before. Why would it work now? So if you look at the reform movement, you can see that the cost and the number of people employed to maintain these reform movements keeps going up, but the scores are fairly flat. We've had a little success in the STEM, science, which is good. But is it worth the money? So, will Common Core suddenly bend all these lines up? I don't know. We didn't test it. So what can you do? Stock Common Core is nonpartisan. I am on conference calls with deeply progressive New Yorkers every week, and then I'm on conference calls every week with hardcore Tea Partiers on Thursday. So this is truly nonpartisan, okay? And so we're all working together. No one wants to talk about that, but it's true. And so every state has a group, and we have a lot of legislation. There's pauses, moves to defund it, pulling out little pieces of it, data protection, rewriting and rebranding their own college and career-ready standards. And just recently, the U.S. House and Senate submitted resolutions which condemn the use of the federal control, remember we were talking about that, by coercing states by withholding and offering funding and waivers. That's not what the U.S. Department of Ed is supposed to be doing. And that's not what that ESCA originally was meant for. I'm not going to read them, but this is just this week, all bills pending. And actually, Illinois just added one. So Illinois bills, we had 2 pause bills and 2 pause resolutions because there was no financial analysis and only about 50% of schools even have the infrastructure to do the PARCC test when it goes live. They're introduced by Senator Kyle McCarter and Rep. Dwight Kay. New bill, just this month, introduced by Senator William Delgado. Now notice, Republican and Democrat now, that's a big deal. He wants to limit the data sharing. And that just went in. And he's the chairman of the Education Committee, so I think there's a pretty good chance that that bill might go somewhere. So what can you do? Get informed like you are tonight. I always post stuff on the website and on the Facebook page. Everyone's welcome. I like lively debate. I have Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, you name it, everybody, teachers. There's printable items on the website that you can print out and keep in your purse or what have you to give to friends. Talk to your friends and family. Attend school board meetings. They're still controlling your curriculum, folks. If you have, goofy books, that's all about them, okay? Ask to see the books before they approve them. Get on the curriculum committee. Just keep calling your state and federal elected representatives. Make them care about this. They don't know about it. They just know the basics. So my final word is, education is the key to our future. And we have a whole generation now in an experiment. So we need to keep a really close eye on what's going on. All Americans need to be a part of the conversation. And one little warning from me, appointed boards that run charter schools is not the answer. This is the whole point of Common Core. The point with Common Core is you don't vote or vote out the people controlling it. So Illinois, with this Illinois State Charter School Commission, where the governor and the Illinois Department of Ed is deciding who our charter schools are to get our taxpayer funds, but we can't get rid of them, we can't unelect them if they're really stinky, with all kinds of bribes and side deals from these charter companies, not good, okay? We want to control our schools because we pay for them and they're our kids. We want our teachers to be able to teach. They are professionals. They should be in charge of the classroom. Any situation where you have no voice, no vote, no say, no information, in my opinion, is a bad place to be. Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Erin, for doing that. Let's give her another round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm running for Congress for two reasons. Number one, from a financial situation, our country needs to take a right-hand turn. And the second reason is that there is a large number of people, as Erin showed on the chart, the number of folks and the number of people that are engaged in the educational system. They're not all bad folks. There's a lot of very, very good folks. But I would wager to say that we as a nation are being used to promote and continue an agenda that does not equal the last 237 years. And I think there's a lot of folks inside the system that are doing their jobs day in and day out, and they are earning a paycheck and very good at what they do. But we see a larger agenda, and we can't let it happen. If the United States falls, there's nowhere else to turn. If we look at what's happened in the last 24 hours, even in Ukraine, those of you who watch the news, and we look at Ireland, and we look at Canada, there is an agenda here that is being promoted by a few. The good news is there's a whole lot more of us than there is of them. And that Constitution, as precious as it is, has not changed. And the amendments that have gone through have not been in the recent, but I tell you that's coming. And for us to be able to allow that Constitution to be changed will be the beginning of the end of our nation. So from a financial perspective, we need to make some changes, and I'm going to go to Washington and drive that. But we also need to cut off the head of a lot of this, which is the executive branch mandating a lot of this through the Department of Education and the rest of those unlegislated bodies where a few folks in a room decide what to go mandate, and that gets carried out for all 350 million. So some people say eternal optimist, but the United States, the future is very bright. We have so much opportunity, and we have a lot of things that Reagan didn't have 30 years ago in terms of the energy independence, Fox News, a little bit more left and right balance out there, and the progression through our nation is not all bad. But we have the opportunity to stop that in its tracks, and it's going to take some folks to go to Washington to drive that. So if you're interested, the primary is March 18th. We're in the last 4 weeks here. There's been a lot of folks in this room that have volunteered countless hours. It's right now about name recognition. Selfishly, throughout the year, there's 4 of us running. If any of the other 3 had the values that I had and been able to drive the way I think we need to lead and drive to Washington, I would have gotten out of the race and followed. But there's nobody out there that's going to have the courage to drive and to lead. And so I'm quite happy to keep going. I'm quite happy to go all the way to Washington. So if anybody's interested in helping, see me afterwards. Debbie, my faithful campaign manager, is in the back, and she'll definitely put you to work if it's behind the scenes or if it's out in front, door knocking or walking. We really appreciate that. So again, please see Erin afterwards. She drove 2 hours to be down here, so don't hold back on any questions you have for her. Thank you so much for coming tonight.